In my senior year of high school, I found a mute kid at an underground boxing club. He promised to protect me, but when a fire broke out, he ran to save my sister. In this life, I gave him a cold glance. Can't even speak, get lost. That night, he kneeled in the pouring rain, signing repeatedly at the door. Why not this time? When I pushed open the private room door with a bunch of chrysanthemums, I saw Sam kneeling on the ground, licking the cream off my sister's feet. Get it all, even here, she said. Sandy's wine-red fingertips held a glass of red wine, swaying. She pushed her foot further toward him. I stared at Sam's broad, silent back, clenching my fists. What a high taste you have. I threw the pale chrysanthemums into her lap. The petals scattered, tumbling down her low-cut dress. Hearing my familiar voice, Sam buried himself deeper, as if I could ignore his presence. The first time I saw Sam, he was being pinned down and beaten by a fighter a head taller than him. Every punch aimed to kill. I wore a black hoodie, leaning against a railing nearby, twirling a lollipop with my tongue. Not stopping yet, the bronze figure on the ground gradually stopped moving. When I'm in a bad mood, I like to come alone to the underground boxing club. The sound of punches hitting flesh stimulates my numbed nerves, sometimes making me feel like I'm still alive. Here, a death isn't rare. I frowned and was ready to leave when I heard shuffling behind me. He wobbled to his feet, no part of him unscathed, yet in an instant, he gathered his strength and fiercely struck back at his opponent. Later, amid the crowd's cheers, I understood the change. Calling Sam a dead mute didn't get him killed, surprisingly. Dead mute. Sandy propped her foot on his bare, bronze shoulder, her eyes flicking to the workbook in my hand. Amy, you think he ignored you because you said he's bad at studying? Don't be naive. When you messaged to make up last night, what do you think we were doing? Me bully him? One punch from him can kill me. If it wasn't his choice, would he do this? Just a bit of fun. Amy never played it. Sandy squinted, her tone flippant and arrogant. Yeah, who is Sam? When I brought the dying Sam home, he would rather burn to death with a fever at midnight than let me care for him. He was stubborn, unyielding, always on guard, like a wild beast strayed into the human world. No one can force him unless he wishes. He has nothing, so he fears nothing. He often writes that. But when did it start? Was it when Sandy fed him cake in the abandoned classroom, and he didn't refuse? When Sandy deliberately showed up at my house disheveled? Or some night, when he didn't see me home? A lump formed in my chest as I threw the heavy workbook at his back. The workbook cut a glaring red mark across his back. Sam, look at me. Just shake your head, and I can pretend today never happened. Sandy likes to bully at school. Who knows if she holds something over Sam? Only then did I realize, was I making excuses for my boyfriend? Sam looked up, wiping the cream off his mouth, blending with his lip color. I tried to find humiliation, hesitation, or reluctance on his face, but found nothing. Nothing at all. Amy, enough already. Don't push my darling too far. She leaned forward, her chest pressed against his shoulder, barely moving. From when I was 10, after Sandy and her garish mother barged into my home, she never stopped taking my things. My rabbit doll, my colored pencil box, even my boyfriend. If she wanted something, she'd get it. She clung to my back like sticky tar, impossible to shake off. I could punch Sandy dead, but she'd always weasel her way into stealing my stuff with a delicate air. I thought Sam was an exception. After all, when I had a high fever, he trembled as he carried me to the hospital 5 kilometers away. And every night I came home late, he silently followed behind, putting any stalkers into the ICU. He once clumsily wrote in his notebook, "Only like Miss Amy." I turned away, knocking over the 3-tiered cake tower, heading downstairs without looking back. The fire began to spread then. First, a commotion downstairs, then thick smoke filling the air. Screams, running, alarms, none of it registered with me. I only felt a searing pain in my back, tears welling up. Instinctively, I looked back at Sam. He couldn't bear to see me cry. Normally, he would awkwardly hold me, brushing my tears with his rough fingers. But trapped under a burning beam, he turned to save my sister. Without a moment's hesitation, I raised my hand. Forget it. Really gonna buy our fighter? The buzz returned, and the boxing club owner's face came into view. Behind him was a bruised Sam, his eyes wet, filled with a long-lost affection. I was reborn, back to the day I bought Sam. I squeezed the bank card, stepping back. Can't even speak. Let him go. Leaving the boxing club, I heard the owner told YA, "No way she has money to buy my top fighter." Actually, though my dad was clueless at home, he never skimped on my needs. That's why in my past life, I could spend money to redeem Sam, heal him, teach him to read, warming his heart over time. But this time, I don't want it. Whoever it is, ultimately, they all run to Sandy. The flames of my past life burned in my eyes, quickening my pace back home. Somewhere along the way, cloudy skies turned to downpour, clearing the air. I was getting ready to go upstairs when I saw a broad figure kneeling outside the window. Rainwater streamed down his back. I squinted and tried to read his sign language. Why don't you need me this time? A purple lightning bolt split the sky, and the heavy rain created a layer of scorching steam. I pushed open the door. The raindrops felt like venomous bugs crawling at my feet, bringing a slight chill. What are you here for? I gave him a cold look and retreated into the house. He was soaked. His white shirt clung tightly to his waist and abdomen with each breath. Sam's throat was scalded with boiling water by his drunken father when he was 7 years old. He hates being called mute and doesn't like sign language. If I hadn't visited the orphanage when I was young, I wouldn't even know what he was saying. Sam's lips were tightly pressed together. The mist in his eyes was indistinguishable from rainwater or tears. Every time he made me angry, this was the expression he wore. When thunder rolled from the distance, I softened a bit. Get inside before you die at my doorstep. As he stood up, his steps were unsteady. That's when I remembered. He told me once that when he was 12, he had beaten someone he shouldn't have and got pinned to the ground and stomped on harshly. His right knee never fully healed. I withdrew my gaze and handed him a towel. Dry yourself off. Leave when the rain stops. Sam's hands were still wet. Like a little beast, he tentatively touched my palm. Always like this. The first time he secretly went to an underground boxing club and got himself injured all over, he also touched my palm like this. I looked away and pinched my own palm. Even if you can't talk, can't you listen? I didn't give him another chance. I fled upstairs. In my previous life, the sight of him running towards Sandy's back flashed before me. Haven't I tasted enough betrayal? That night, the thunder finally stopped very late. I didn't sleep well. Flames seemed to lick at my back. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. Sam had left at some point, and the towel was neatly folded and placed on the coffee table. Maybe because he never had a home growing up, in our past life, he was quite enthusiastic about these trivial chores. I used to watch him iron clothes while chewing on ice cream, teasing him about being a perfect husband, making him blush. Thinking back now, it was so childish. How could I think so easily about a future like that? I was annoyed. I messed up the towel, as if that could erase Sam's presence. For the next 2 months, Sam didn't show up again. The hot and long summer vacation passed in a blink. On the first day of school, there was a buzz mixed with anxiety, drifting in the air like a virus. Sandy was starting her junior year. She drove a flashy sports car to school, drawing a lot of envious looks. She always liked stealing the spotlight since childhood. She couldn't even let go of anything that was mine. Even Sam. I steadied myself and just sat down when a cheer erupted in the classroom. I looked up and met Sam's gaze. He had lost weight. His cheekbones were more pronounced, and his jawline clearer. Years of underground boxing made him look more mature than the other boys in class. Welcome the new transfer student. He's got a solid foundation. Everyone, help him out. Find an empty seat, and take out the 50 test papers you got over the break. Check the answers yourselves. Mr. Lucas rasped, distributing the answer keys. Sam, with everyone's eyes on him, walked slowly toward me. No way, he's going to sit next to Amy. She's notorious for being a loner. Why not pick me as your desk mate? The fluttering sound of test papers couldn't drown out the whispers around us. I looked up to meet his gaze. See, can I sit here? His raspy voice entered my ears as I realized, belatedly, Sam was actually speaking. He must have just started regaining his speech. Each word seemed to require an immense effort and swallowing. Actually, Sam's vocal cords weren't completely damaged. He had a chance to speak again. In our past life, I thought about taking him to see a doctor, but he stubbornly refused. He couldn't stand being called mute and wouldn't face his inability to speak, because he couldn't confront the fact that his own father hurt him. But now, how come? I stared at him in a daze until Mr. Lucas urged him to sit down, breaking my reverie. But why? The calm I had regained was disrupted. I slammed down my pen and walked out of the classroom with my hands pocketed. My dad donated a building to the school, and I was known for being a loner. Other than Sam, no one cared about my sudden departure. Thinking about this life, even though I hadn't given Sam a piece of my mind, he had entered my life again in a different way. I initially thought I'd wait until after the college entrance exams to deal with it. But why wait? I threw pebbles into the artificial lake at the school center. Sam had unknowingly stood behind me. I know you're mad. He looked anxious, but his throat couldn't handle so many words at once. I tilted my head, standing up slowly. Mad. Why would I be mad? Mad that you left home, without a word, and then got together with my most hated sister. Or mad that you abandoned me in a fire and walked away. I poked his chest, advancing step by step. Sam's eyes shifted. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was reborn too. But if he died for Sandy once, why is he here troubling me now? I jutted my chin, pointing to the lake behind him. Yeah, I'm mad. Jump in, and I'll forgive you. When I was 12, my mom passed away, and my dad brought his new lover home that same year, along with a daughter only a year younger than me. Everyone I could depend on in this world disappeared in that year, until I picked Sam up. I had my first taste of wanting to wholeheartedly rely on someone, but when the fire blazed, he still ran to Sandy. Just because I didn't confront him immediately didn't mean I wasn't resentful. Sam couldn't swim. There was no way he'd jump in. I sneered and turned away from him this time. He didn't follow. I was fuming inside. As soon as I stepped onto the corner stairs, I saw Sandy and her gang cornering a young girl, grabbing her collar and taking pictures. Seeing me approach, she kicked the girl aside and stood there with her arms crossed, looking down at me. She had only been at the school for a couple of days, but had already formed a little clique, bullying everyone around. The school turned a blind eye because of her connections, but that didn't mean I was going to let her push me around. I heard there's a new transfer student in your class, with a pretty nice figure, huh? She came closer, tapping my shoulder with her blood-red fingernail. I swatted her hand away, and slapped her across the face. Sandy looked at me in disbelief. Her little minions also took a step back in fear. Just a bunch of girls chasing money. When things get real, they run faster than anyone else. You're just like your mother, who's a mistress. You love picking up other people's leftovers. Why don't you work in the cafeteria? I hit her with both words and slaps, making her stagger back. Sandy usually dieted a lot. She was no match for someone like me, who frequented underground boxing gyms. Even if she was angry, she could only be beaten by me. I straddled her, and the sound of my slaps echoed through the corridor. Sandy usually acted so brazenly that no one even pretended to stop me. Amy, are you crazy? Sandy's words were halfway swallowed by my slaps. My hand was a bit numb, and I had also vented the anger from my past life. When people started crowding downstairs, I began to regain my senses. There's trouble. Someone drowned in the lake. My heart stopped for a moment. When I took another breath, Sandy pushed me to the ground. My hand scraped against the rough ground, leaving a glaring red mark. Sam. I didn't know how I got to the lake, but Sam was surrounded by a group on the wet grass, barely alive. He stood by the lake for a long time, then suddenly jumped in. What was he thinking? With his looks and build, he wouldn't go hungry. Another voice chimed in. He floated in the lake for ages. I thought he was dead. It was so scary. Sam lay there, pale, his eyes eagerly searching around. I stood frozen. It took a long time to find my voice. Why did he really jump? You jump in, and I'll forgive you. Sam was taken to the infirmary. After getting in for, it was just the two of us in the room. He turned to look at me, with a hesitant expression in his eyes. I took his medicine and held it to his mouth with a cold face. I don't plan on becoming an instigator. You're still mad at me. His voice was hoarse from the water. Sam, you might think reincarnation is nonsense, but I started. I believe you. He interrupted, his eyes firm. Actually, when he knelt in the rain, I already knew. No one likes to be betrayed, especially me. I continued. I'm more cowardly than anyone, and my wounds take a long time to heal. His eyes dimmed slowly. After a long while, he trembled as he touched my back, where the fire had scarred me. Does it hurt? He asked, voice trembling. I turned away, sniffling, wiping away the tears at the corners of my eyes. I haven't even started my revenge. Take care of yourself. Don't die. Back in the classroom, my desk was piled with test papers. I buried my head deep, the smell of ink stinging my nose and making my eyes tear up. Sam stayed in the school hospital for 3 days before coming back to class. To outsiders, he just said he slipped and fell into the lake. The school, half believing, reinforced the lake with security layers, and Sam became famous because of it. Rush hour before class brought a long queue of people wanting to see him. Sitting by the window, love letters passed through my hands before reaching him. I don't want them. He still spoke with difficulty. These days, he had toned down, not staring at me all the time, but he still silently handed me a pen when I couldn't find one. He still stuffed my desk with lollipops and bunny plushes. I threw the pink love letter onto his desk. You don't want it. Should I want it? Suddenly feeling inexplicable irritation, I was about to leave the classroom when I bumped into Sandy. This time, she was alone, without her followers. After I publicly slapped her last time, she angrily went to the school seeking justice. Your face is swollen. How come we never saw it had so much potential? You see, this is a family matter. It's difficult for the school to intervene. The bald-headed school leader said, hands spread, looking troubled. She had been riding on my dad's power, strutting around the school, making the higher-ups sick of her for a while. The school couldn't act, but as Amy, handling her is a family matter. I popped a lollipop into my mouth and said, in an unfriendly tone, what do you want? Amy, why so tense? We're just here to sort out some family matters. Family matters? What's there to say between humans and animals? She clenched her fist and took half a step toward me. Sam, for the first time, bravely grabbed my hand, standing in front of me, his broad figure enveloping me completely. In my past life, my favorite thing was to hug him. His broad shoulders made me feel safe when he held me. He struggled to speak. If you have something to say it to me. Sandy sneered, casting a suggestive look at Sam in front of me. You still owe me a wedding. Hearing this, Sam's fists clenched, his back trembling, not daring to look back at me. So romantic, I sneered, pulling the lollipop out from my mouth and tossing it into the trash. I tried to break free, but he held onto my wrist tightly, the rough calluses warming my skin. Get lost. Don't dirty my eyes. I ruthlessly kicked his leg, seizing the chance to shake off his grip. Amy, why haven't you learned your lesson? I huddled in the empty equipment room, burying my head in my knees, even starting to plan how to wreak havoc at the wedding. A wedding. Sam promised me that in my previous life too. He wrote me a long note back then. Last time I went to the underground fighting ring without telling you. It was to save up for your birthday gift. I made you mad, that's my fault. I thought it over and decided I need to study hard, get into college, and then find a proper job. Next month's exams. I'm determined to be in the top 100 in our grade. My foundation is weak. I'll retake the year if I have to. When do you plan to get married? Can you wait for me? If you can't, that's okay. But if you're going to marry someone else. I snatched his pen before he could finish writing. After Sam came into my life, I never thought of marrying anyone else, but I didn't expect he'd promise Sandy a wedding so soon. A dull pain came from my calf. I looked up, tears still on my face. Sandy and her new lackeys cornered me, casting shadows over me. I didn't plan to trouble you this soon, she said. She contemptuously patted the table and sat across from me. What did you do to seduce Sam? In the last life, he promised me a grand wedding, and now he's completely taken in by you. She leaned in, her smile not reaching her eyes, her followers ready to pounce. One Sandy I could handle, but this situation was beyond my control. Taking advantage of a brief moment, I secretly dialed Sam's number and kicked my phone under the table. You came all the way to the west side of the school just to ask me this. I leaned against the cold wall, trying to calm myself down. You know, I targeted that fool 7 times. Each time when the fire broke out, he held you tightly. After being reincarnated, I suddenly felt that the whole targeting game wasn't so hard to accept. Memories of flickering flames came to mind, bringing their intense heat. If he wasn't the hardest target, I wouldn't be interested in him. He's just a mute with a pretty face and good physique. Sandy looked at her manicured nails and sneered. Really? So why not give up? Don't want to or can't? She suddenly paused, grabbed my neck, and pushed me against the wall. In the last life, I was about to succeed. Sam promised me a grand wedding if it wasn't for the system. Sandy stopped mid-sentence and glared at me coldly. Why should a dying person know so much? She suddenly applied more pressure, and I pushed her wrist away, pinning her to the ground, only to be kicked hard in the knee. Before I could stand up, my arms were twisted behind me, rendering me immobile. That's when Sam arrived. He kicked the door open, his white shirt billowing, just like the first time we met. I lay on the ground, my knee aching, groping for my phone in the corner. Did Sam feel the same pain when someone stepped on his right leg? I looked up, and Sam was effortlessly fighting 5 people, his broad back heaving. Which hand touched her? He looked down at a man in black, bending slowly, while Sandy quivered like a scared quail. As I struggled to get up, I saw a flash of a knife. In the chaos, someone brought out a knife, aiming it at Sam's back. When the ambulance arrived, Sam's shirt was blood-soaked on one side, his fingers clutching my sleeve, trembling slightly. Sam, don't die. I still have so many questions for you. My voice shook uncontrollably, as if I'd never be calm again. If, as Sandy said, Sam saved me 7 times in the fire, why did he choose Sandy the 8th time? Why don't I remember those 7 times? And who did he come for this time? When I followed him to the hospital, the blood on my hand had dried, but the grip on my heart tightened. At 4 in the morning, I finally felt some relief. The doctor said, the patient lost a lot of blood, but he'll be fine. Take good care of your boyfriend. Lucas, who'd been staying up with me, argued with the doctor. What boyfriend? They're just desk mates. Can't desk mates care about each other deeply? He squinted at me. You look familiar. Were you in class 3? I'm Lucas, your desk mate. The noises faded in the hallway, and the surgery room door opened, bringing me back to reality. Sam looked pale, with bandages around his shoulder and a small one around his neck. It's okay, I sighed with relief. For the next few days, the doctor insisted Sam stay for observation. I became Lucas's errand person, delivering meals and notes to Sam. When Sam's hot breath grazed my ear, I leaned slightly away. You don't need to worry about the hospital bills. Lucas will cover it. No need, I have money. Where did you get money? He grew up in the underground fight club. The money he earned got taken by a greedy boss. I memorized the winning lottery numbers. Guess I underestimated him. I moved to take the porridge from him. So, what's on the college entrance exam? Sam pursed his lips, not looking at me. Don't know. Never lived to that day. My hand shook, spilling hot porridge on the back of my hand. Sam fumbled to wipe it, but never dared touch my hand. After the exams, it's your birthday. I prepared many gifts, but never had the chance to give any. Sam's voice was still a bit hoarse and his pace slow as always. So, in the previous life, I took a risk and pretended to let Sandy succeed in her strategy. I had already seen the system that disliked her, and it took advantage of an energy fluctuation to break away from her body. Before that, she always tried to strategize me. When it seemed she was going to fail or got bored, she would use a fire to restart her strategy. The system was also unhappy about her actions, so it didn't erase my memory. By the 8th time, it even reached out to me for cooperation, to escape from Sandy. Sam tentatively squeezed my hand. There will be no more rebirths. From now on, I'll never leave you again. My heart felt like it had been run over by countless needles, crushed, and scattered open, drying in the sunlight. I turned my head, and my gaze fell on the bloody bunny doll in the corner. When Sam arrived at the equipment room, I didn't know where he had come from just now, holding a new bunny doll. These days, he bought me a bunny doll every day. Once, when I was mad, I threw the doll into the trash bin right in front of him. His nearly 6'3" frame lowered his eyes to look at me. It's okay, if you don't like it. I'll get you a life-sized one for your birthday, alright? I let out a long sigh. I think I forgot to bring your papers. I'll go get them. I slowly pulled my hand away, and dashed out of the hospital room without turning back. In the bathroom, I rubbed the scar on my shoulder. Does it still hurt? Thinking about how Sam had shielded me from 7 fires, it seemed to hurt less. I looped around the hospital and bought his favorite ribs. But when I had composed myself and was ready to go back up, Sam was gone. The bunny doll still lay quietly on the table. Anxious, I dialed Sam's number, but Sandy's voice came through. Wanna save him? Come to the abandoned paper factory in the west of the city. Come alone. You don't want his throat to be ruined again, do you? I could hear the wind howling and the sound of boiling water through the receiver. I squeezed the phone, my voice coming out hoarse and unfamiliar. Okay. By the time I arrived in the west of the city by cab, the sky had gradually darkened. The pale purple sunset was edging the clouds, unveiling the heavy layers. Sandy, what do you really want? Sam, behind her, had his mouth stuffed with an old rag. Someone pinned his right knee to the ground, sweat beading on his forehead. Sandy raised her head and smiled, her earring brushing against her overly skinny collarbone. The person who injured Sam was quickly caught, and even confessed on the spot that Sandy had hired them. These days, it seemed she wasn't doing well. The system is really gone. She kicked off her high heels, stepping on the thin layer of dust on the cement floor. I can't go back. Are you happy? Do you know why I chose to take on Sandy's identity to strategize? I'm the daughter of a mistress, but I've never known what I did wrong. From childhood to now, I've never had friends. Everyone avoids me. Unlike Sandy, my mom didn't make it, and we lived in a tiny room where even standing up was a struggle, for over a decade. She sat on the crumbling steps, lighting a slim cigarette. Sometimes I wonder, if my mom had really married that man, would my life be different? But you really surprised me. As the legitimate daughter, you always overshadowed me. Even the targets of my strategy would come to you. How could I let you have your way? Sandy slowly exhaled a smoke ring and took a knife from the corner. Cut off your piano-playing fingers, one by one. Otherwise, I'll let your little boyfriend experience the feeling of having his throat burned by boiling water again. I lowered my head and slowly picked up the sharp knife. From a distance, Sam's eyes reddened as he shook his head frantically, the wound on his shoulder splitting open with bright red blood. Who says you can't go back? I looked blankly at the knife in my hand, playing with it. Sandy frowned slightly, her cigarette almost burned out before she casually tossed it into the corner. What do you mean? The system is still here. It just transferred to me. I lifted my eyes, staring straight at her. She gulped, a greedy glint flashing in her eyes. I slowly approached Sandy. Her bodyguards moved swiftly, but she held them back with a glance. After a successful strategy, you can request to return to the real world with your favorite character, right? I continued probing, though sweat was already seeping into my palms. I know very little about the system, but now I can only hope that the police outside will cooperate with me. I threw the dagger in my hand away, kicking it casually to the side. You've rebooted the scenario 8 times. You should know better than I do. The fire, it's the reboot mechanism, right? I stood by the half-collapsed window, casually raising my hand towards the outside. If I succeed in this, I can take you with me. Against the twilight, I reached my hand out to her. She never belonged to this world, wanted, hunted down, this kind of life. It was all unreal to her. Sandy treated this place like a game, got bored, then set a fire and started over. It was probably because she abused the reboot privileges that the system teamed up with Sam to separate from Sandy. Unfortunately, she still doesn't realize where she went wrong and still hopes for some external power to save her. I looked at the river not far away, my voice firm. I can take you away, on one condition, let Sam go. Sandy was breathing heavily, her gaze lost. No, why should I trust you? The people outside are all yours, and it's been raining for 3 days straight. There's no way a fire could start by accident. I pointed at the smoke rising from downstairs, with a barrel of oil next to Sam. Honestly, I was worried, but I had to appear calm. Seeing the familiar fire, Sandy's eyes lit up, the despair of running away once again filled with vitality. Not far away, Sam broke free from the gag in his mouth, his voice urgent. It can't be. You can't become the next Sandy. People who treat life like a game will eventually suffer for it. Smoke slowly rose up, Sandy jumping barefoot by the window. So what if the system is gone? I can leave here anyway. At that moment, there was a dull sound from downstairs. The quick-reacting men in black ran downstairs, thinking that Sam in his current state couldn't cause any trouble. But that's Sam we're talking about. He reacted swiftly. As soon as the man in black turned around, he kicked his waist with his left leg, then picked up the dagger I had kicked over and stabbed the guy in the calf. When Sandy realized what was happening, she just stopped dancing and stared blankly. It's okay. It doesn't matter if you kill him, we'll just start over. But Sandy, there is no next time. She staggered towards Sam, the fallen ember from her cigarette igniting the oil barrel. The worst thing, it finally happened. The fire downstairs was fake, but upstairs, it was real. As the fire spread, I grabbed Sam's hand. Come over here. Sam hugged me tightly. Don't be afraid, Amy. Once again, he protected me, just like in the previous 7 reboots. I slowly slid my hand down his back. Does it hurt? When the fire spreads out again and again, does it hurt? This time, let me take you away, okay? I pulled his hand, slowly moving to the window. The creek outside was gently flowing, reddened by the sunset. By the time the police and firefighters reached the upper floor, the fire was out of control. Sandy stubbornly sat in the flames, waiting for the next resurrection. But sadly, there would never be a next time. On the day the college entrance exam ended, I waited for Sam for a long time, kicking pebbles aimlessly at the door. That day, when I jumped out the window, Sam's old injury flared up, and he ended up back in the hospital for another couple of weeks. Get better soon, will you? You're in the hospital every day. How are you going to get into college? I lay on his hospital bed, peeling apples while complaining. Sam braided my hair, his gaze gentle. I will, definitely. I don't know where he got the confidence. Barely in the top 200 of our grade. I kicked every pebble at the door, and as nightfall crept in, Sam finally showed up. A college student finally graces us with his presence. Didn't finish the last math problem. My words came out sarcastically. Sam's broad hand patted my head. Went to get a present. Where is it? Where is it? Liar. He had promised to get me a life-sized bunny plush. Sam raised his head, his Adam's apple moving up and down awkwardly in front of me. Look up. I raised my head, and in the gradually deepening dusk, drones formed the shape of a huge bunny. In the overlapping lights, its ears drooped, bouncing in the starry sky.